Her name was Elara. A woman, forged in the fires of loss, takes apart the empire and the soul of the man who destroyed her world, using his own ambition as her weapon. After her husband's brutal attack costs her their unborn daughter, a brilliant Lagos architect meticulously designs the ruin of his empire and his soul, proving that the ultimate revenge is justice, served with ice-cold precision. The rain started softly, a quiet, steady tapping on the glass that seemed to match the rhythm of the little life kicking inside her. Amara pressed her hand flat against the cool window, 25 floors above the wet, shiny streets of Echo Atlantic. Down below, car headlights on the Lekki-Ikoyi Link Bridge blurred into long, shimmery streaks, like a river of light in the Lagos darkness. She watched a single raindrop zigzag its way down the glass. Then another kick, a bit stronger this time, a secret language just for her. She smiled, a real one that reached her eyes and smoothed out the tired lines. It had been a long day of visiting sites, arguing with builders and charming investors, but this was the payoff. This quiet moment caught between the storm outside and the silent, cool perfection of their penthouse. Their kingdom. The elevator chimed, a soft little tune that meant he was home, David, her David. He walked in, looking like he was shrugging off the whole day. He was handsome, even when he was tired. His suit was perfect, his shoulders were broad, and he smelled like success and expensive cologne. He dropped his leather briefcase by the door with a soft thud on the marble floor. "There you are," he said, his voice a low rumble. He walked across the huge living room, his steps quiet on the thick rug. He came up behind her, slid his hands around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. They stood there together, looking out at the city they were taking over, one bold project at a time. "We did it, baby," he whispered, his breath warm on her ear. "The Ikoyi Tower deal. It's done. Signed it this afternoon." Amara leaned back against him, fitting right into his arms. "I knew you would." "Did you ever doubt it?" "With you? Never." He kissed her neck, a possessive kind of kiss. His hand moved from her waist to her swollen belly. "So how's our little heir doing? Kicking up a storm?" "She's going to be a soccer player, this one," Amara laughed, putting her hand on top of his. "She's been practicing all night." "He," David corrected her gently, "a boy, to carry on the name." Amara didn't fight him on it. It was a game they played. Boy or girl, who cared? This baby was everything. The peak of their love, their ambition, their climb to the top. They'd met 5 years ago at a real estate conference, just two hungry outsiders with huge dreams. Her inheritance from her grandmother gave them their start. It bought them their first small piece of land in Lekki, a huge gamble that paid off big time. And just like that, Aura Properties was born. His drive, her vision, his charm, her quiet, solid skill. They were the perfect team, the golden couple of Lagos real estate. "Come on," David said, turning her from the window. "You need to rest. You're working way too hard." "I'm fine, David. I'm pregnant, not sick." "You're carrying my son," he said, and his tone made it clear there was no arguing. He led her to the bedroom. "My legacy. Nothing's more important than that." He said it with so much love and conviction that she just ignored the little flicker of worry. She let him lead her, let him fuss over her. "This is just him caring," she told herself. "This is him protecting me." This was the beautiful cage she'd helped him build, and right now the bars felt like a hug. The rain beat harder on the window, but inside everything was calm, everything was perfect. But the perfect picture started to crack, in tiny ways you'd barely notice. A comment here, a decision made without her there. It was the little things at first. David started calling Aura Properties my company in interviews, with a smile and a nod to Amara as the heart of our home. At first, she figured it was just for show, but then it started happening at home too. "I handled it," he'd say with a wave of his hand when she asked about a permit she'd spent weeks on. "Don't you worry your pretty head about it." They were in his home office, a room with dark wood and smoky glass that looked out over the lagoon. She had the first drawings for the new Echo Pearl Tower project spread out on his big desk, but he hadn't even looked at them. "It's my job to worry about it, David," she said, her voice even. "I'm a partner, remember? My name's on the company papers. And on the deeds for the land we bought with my money," she thought, but didn't say. He looked up from his phone, annoyed, like she was a kid interrupting him. "Amara, you're pregnant. The baby should be your priority. Let me handle the stress. I'm the man. It's my job to provide and protect. My work doesn't stress me out. I love it. And it's our company, David. Ours. We built it together." He let out a long, dramatic sigh. He got up and walked over, taking her hands. His grip was a little too tight. "Of course, my love, of course. But things are different now. The stakes are higher. The people we're dealing with are ruthless. I just want you safe. I want our son to be safe." His words were sweet, but the message was loud and clear. Stay in your lane. And her lane was getting smaller by the day. He started questioning her when she worked late, the same late nights they used to spend together, drinking bad coffee and dreaming big. Now those nights were suspicious. "Who were you with?" he'd ask, searching her face for any sign of a lie. "The engineers, David. We've been over this. The report on the marina site came in, and we have to redesign the foundation." "You could have called me. You could have just had them email it." "I'm the main architect on this project. I had to be there." Then he'd get quiet, his jaw tight. He wouldn't accuse her of anything, not yet. But he created this feeling, this cloud of distrust that filled up their beautiful empty penthouse. He started checking her phone when he thought she was asleep. She knew because he wasn't very good at hiding it. She'd wake up in the middle of the night and see the faint glow of the screen, with his dark shape hunched over beside her. The first time, she called him out. "What are you doing?" He dropped the phone like it was hot. "Nothing. I couldn't sleep, just checking the Asian markets." It was a terrible lie, and they both knew it. The air was thick with what he wasn't saying. She just felt so sad and tired. The man she loved, the man she was building a life with, was looking for ghosts in a sunny room. He was making his own poison and drinking it, but somehow expected her to be the one to get sick. The cracks in the glass were getting bigger, and she was scared the whole beautiful, fragile thing was about to shatter. The other developer's name was Femi Adebayo. He was from an old, rich Ikoyi family, the kind of guy who'd never had to work for anything. His company was one of the big ones that Aura Properties had been happily shaking up. There was no bad blood between them, not from Mara's side anyway. It was just professional respect, a healthy competition that made her better at her job. Femi was smart, and he saw that she was too. They'd been on a city planning committee together, and she always loved talking to him, sharing ideas with someone who got it. The text message that changed everything was totally innocent. It came on a Tuesday night while Amara was rubbing her sore back and looking over some blueprints. "Heard you got the Eco Pearl contract. You beat us fair and square. We'll have to get drinks to celebrate next time I see you. Well done, eh?" She smiled and typed back a quick, polite reply. "Thanks, Femi. It was a tough one. Talk soon." She put her phone down and didn't think another thing about it. David got home a couple of hours later in a foul mood. A deal he'd been counting on had fallen through. He paced around the living room, complaining about useless government workers and all the red tape in the city. Amara just listened, trying to calm him down, waiting for him to run out of steam. She was in the kitchen making him some tea when she noticed it had gotten quiet in the other room. A heavy, loaded kind of quiet. She walked back in and found him standing by the coffee table with her phone in his hand, his face like a thundercloud. "What is this?" he asked, his voice way too quiet. She looked at the screen. He had her messages open to Femi's text. "It's nothing, David. That's Femi Adebayo from Adebayo Holdings. He was just saying congrats on the Eco Pearl contract. His company was the main one we were up against." "Well done, eh?" he sneered, his voice all high and mocking. "Drinks to celebrate." "It's just something people say. It's professional courtesy." "Professional courtesy? Is that what you're calling it? How long has this been going on?" Amara just stared at him, her heart starting to pound. "What are you talking about? Nothing is going on. I told you we were on a committee together. We're colleagues. We're even rivals." "Rivals who have little inside jokes? Rivals who call you A?" He stepped toward her, his eyes burning with a scary, crazy fire. "Don't lie to me, Amara. I'm not an idiot." "David, this is ridiculous. There's nothing to lie about." She tried to stay calm, to talk sense into him, but it was like arguing with a hurricane. He was just gone, lost in some dark fantasy world he'd made up where she was the bad guy. "I see how you look at him at those events," he hissed, getting closer. "The way you laugh at his stupid jokes. You think I don't see it? You think I'm blind? I'm being polite to a colleague. That's it. You're twisting this into something ugly and wrong." Her own anger was bubbling up now. "How dare you accuse me of this, after everything we've built, while I'm carrying your child?" She pointed to her stomach, the ultimate proof of her love and commitment. But in his twisted mind, it wasn't a symbol of their life together anymore. It was a betrayal. "My child?" he spat, the word sounding dirty coming from him. "Are you even sure it's mine?" The question just hung there in the air, ugly and unforgivable. It sucked all the air out of the room. Amara felt like he'd slapped her. The color drained from her face, and for a second she couldn't even breathe. That was the lie. The one that would ruin everything. The one that would start the fire. He'd found the proof he was looking for, not on her phone, but in the dark, twisted corners of his own head. And he believed it completely. The rain that night was insane. It hammered against the penthouse windows, and the wind howled, a sad sound that seemed to creep right through the glass. It was the perfect soundtrack for the end of the world. "Take it back, David," Amara said, her voice a raw whisper. The shock was wearing off, and a deep shaking anger was taking its place. "Take it back." Why should I? He was pacing like a caged animal. "It all adds up. The late nights, the secret little smiles at your phone, you defending him. You've been making a fool out of me." "There's nothing to defend because you haven't done anything wrong. You've made up this sick, jealous fantasy, and you're trying to drag me into it." She stood her ground in the middle of the room, her hands in tight fists. "I am your wife. I am carrying our baby. This is our life, the one we chose, the one we built. Don't you dare burn it all down just because you're feeling insecure." That word, insecure, was like throwing a lit match on gasoline. He stopped pacing and whipped around to face her. "Insecure? You think I'm insecure?" He let out a short, ugly laugh. "I gave you everything. This life, this home. I made you who you are. And you pay me back by sneaking around with that rich kid bastard." "You gave me nothing I didn't earn 10 times over," she yelled, her voice getting louder to be heard over the wind. "This company was built with my money, my ideas, my work. You didn't make me, David. We made each other. And you're forgetting that." "I'm not forgetting a thing." He stalked toward her, and his shadow fell over her. "I remember everything, and I see everything. I see the truth." He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in like claws. "Tell me the truth, Amara. Just for once, tell me the truth." "I have been telling you the truth," she cried, trying to pull her arm away. "Let go of me, David. You're hurting me." His face was right up in hers, his eyes wild. "Is it his?" He snarled, looking down at her belly. "Is it his child?" "It's yours, you bastard. It's ours," she screamed, the sound ripping from her throat. She slapped him. The sharp crack of the slap stunned them both into silence for a second. A red mark started to form on his cheek. He looked at her, his eyes wide with disbelief, and then something inside him just snapped. The last bit of reason, of love, of the man she thought she knew. It just broke. His face went totally blank, the anger gone, replaced by a terrifying emptiness. He didn't say a word. He just pulled his leg back, and with all the force of his frustration and his paranoia, he kicked her. He kicked his pregnant wife right in the stomach. The pain was a white-hot explosion. It knocked the wind right out of her. She gasped, a choked, wet sound, her eyes wide with shock and pain. She stumbled backward, her hands flying to her belly to protect it, but it was too late. She looked down. A dark stain was spreading across her cream-colored dress, a red flower blooming right in the middle of the storm. The last thing she heard before everything went dark was her own scream, a sound so full of horror and despair that the howling wind just swallowed it up. White, Everything was just white. The ceiling, the sheets, the walls. The color of nothing. The color of ghosts. Amara drifted in and out of a fog of painkillers and a much deeper pain that no drug could ever touch. She could hear murmurs, quiet voices at the edge of her hearing, the steady beeping of machines, a rhythm that was the complete opposite of her own frantic, broken heart. Bits and pieces of memory came back to her, the slick, terrifying feeling of warmth spreading down her legs, the frantic ambulance ride through the rain-soaked streets, its siren screaming, the masked faces looking down at her, their eyes full of pity. David's face, pale and horrified, shouting her name, or maybe she just imagined that part. She remembered a doctor, a kind woman with tired eyes, holding her hand. Her words were gentle, but they hit like stones. "We did everything we could, Mrs. Adeoye. You were bleeding internally. We had to do an emergency hysterectomy to save your life." She took a deep breath. "I'm so sorry. The baby, your daughter, she didn't make it." Daughter. It was a girl. The word echoed in the huge empty space that had opened up inside her. A space that just yesterday had been full of life, of kicks and flutters, of dreams of tiny fingers and a whole future. Now there was just silence, a deafening, crushing silence where a heartbeat should have been. She'd already named her Elara, a secret name she'd whispered to her belly in the middle of the night, a name that meant star. Her little star gone out before she ever got a chance to shine. The physical pain was there, a dull, constant throbbing that reminded her of what he'd done, but it was nothing, absolutely nothing compared to the emptiness. The grief was a real thing, a heavy weight on her chest that made it hard to breathe. It was a cold, slimy thing, coiled up in the pit of her stomach where her daughter used to be. They told her David was outside, that he'd been there for days, playing the part of the devastated husband, the grieving father-to-be. He'd told them she'd fallen, a tragic accident on the slippery marble floor, a believable lie. He was good at lies. She refused to see him. Just the thought of his face, his voice, his touch made her want to throw up. The love she'd had for him, a love that had been her whole world, had been burned away in one single brutal moment. It was gone, and in its place, something else was starting to grow in the scorched earth of her soul. It started as a tiny flicker, a cold little spark in the middle of all her grief. It was an ember of pure, raw hatred. It was the first thing she'd felt besides pain and loss since she'd woken up in this sterile white room. And as she lay there staring at the blank ceiling, surrounded by the silence of what could have been, she fed that spark. She fed it with every memory of him being possessive, every time he'd dismissed her, every paranoid accusation. She fed it with the phantom kicks of her daughter, with the echo of her own scream. The grief didn't break her. The pain didn't shatter her. It forged her. It burned away the soft, loving woman she used to be and hammered her into something new, something hard and sharp and unbreakable. Her purpose became crystal clear, a single sharp point of focus in the wreckage of her life. She wouldn't just survive. She wouldn't just heal. She would make him feel it. She would make him feel just a tiny bit of the pain he'd so easily caused her. She wouldn't just take his company, his money, his reputation. She'd take his hope. She'd take his future. She'd hollow him out, just like he'd hollowed her out. She'd leave him with nothing but a silence of his own, a silence that would scream for the rest of his miserable life. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in days, she didn't see the blood on her dress. She saw a blueprint, a plan for a demolition. The architect in her was waking up, and she was designing a ruin. The world came back, sharp and painful, the clatter of a food tray, the hospital smell, the sunlight that was way too bright. For 2 weeks, Amara had pretty much been a ghost, just going through the motions. Eating when they told her to, sleeping when the pills knocked her out. Her mother was always there, fluttering around, her face a mask of worry, her hands always busy, fluffing pillows, peeling fruit, talking in a low, soothing voice that Amara barely even heard. David tried to see her every day. He sent flowers, huge funeral-like bouquets of lilies and roses that she had the nurses toss without even reading the cards. He sent messages through her mother, begging her to forgive him, telling her how much he loved her and how sorry he was. "He's not himself, Amara," her mother would say, her eyes pleading. "He's broken. He just sits in the hallway, staring at your door. He cries like a baby." "Good," Amara replied, her voice totally flat. "Let him cry." Her mother flinched, shocked by how cold she sounded. The Amara she knew was gone, replaced by this quiet, still stranger with haunted eyes. The turning point came on a Thursday. A nurse was changing the dressing on her stomach, a long, angry red line down her middle. Amara looked down at the scar, at the ruined map of her own body. It was proof of his violence, a permanent reminder of her loss. But as she stared at it, she didn't just feel pain, she felt a jolt of something else. A cold, clear anger. This scar wasn't her shame, it was his. This emptiness wasn't her weakness, it was her weapon. That afternoon, when her mother came, Amara sat up a little straighter in bed. "I need you to do something for me, Mama." "Anything, Omami," her mother said, calling her my child in Yoruba. "I need you to go to the house. In my study, in the bottom drawer of my desk, there's a black portfolio with a silver clasp. I need you to bring it to me. And don't let David see you." Her mother looked confused, but she saw the new light in Amara's eyes, a flicker of the woman she used to be, and she didn't ask any questions. She just nodded. "I'll bring it." When the portfolio came the next day, Amara waited until she was alone. Her hands were shaking a little as she opened the clasp. Inside were the documents that were the foundation of her life, of their life. The papers for Aura Properties, LLC. The certificates of occupancy, the C of O, the holy grail of Nigerian property for their first 3 projects. The deed for the penthouse in Echo Atlantic. She spread them out on the clean white sheets of her hospital bed. And she started to read. Her breath caught in her throat. It was all there, in black and white. In his arrogance, in his rush to use her inheritance, in his absolute belief that she was just a quiet, agreeable partner, he had made a huge mistake. Her name. It was on everything. Not just as a small shareholder, as a founding partner. Amarachi Okoro, her maiden name, on the main asset accounts, on the deed for the penthouse, which they'd bought before they got married. He'd seen her as a silent partner, a way to get his hands on her money. He had never, not for 1 second, thought she could be a threat. He never imagined that the woman he saw as just an accessory could one day be the one to sign off on his demolition. A slow, cold smile touched Amara's lips for the first time in weeks. It was a chilling, strange look for her. He had left her the keys to the kingdom. He just didn't know it yet. She wasn't a ghost to be pitied. She was a ghost who was about to start haunting. The game was on. Getting out of the hospital felt like coming up for air after being underwater for a long time. The outside air felt too thin, and the Lagos traffic was too loud. David was there, waiting by the entrance, looking thin and worn out. He rushed toward her when he saw her, his face a mix of hope and desperation. "Amara," he breathed, reaching for her. Her mother, who was holding her arm to keep her steady, tensed up. Amara just took a tiny step back. It was a small move, but it was like putting up a wall of ice. "Don't touch me," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the humid air like a piece of glass. He froze, his hands dropping to his sides. The hurt in his eyes was deep. A small, mean part of her enjoyed it. "Let's go home, baby," he pleaded. "Let me take care of you. Let me make this right." "You'll take me to my mother's house," she said, not even looking at him, "and then you'll leave." The car ride to her parents' house in Ikoyi was silent and suffocating. Her mother sat in the back with her, while David drove their Range Rover, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Their Range Rover for now. The days at her mother's house were a quiet blur. She ate, she slept, she walked in the small walled garden, feeling the sun on her skin. She was getting her physical strength back, bit by bit. But her mind was somewhere else. It was in the fine print. She spent hours in the guest room, with the black portfolio spread out in front of her like a battle plan. She made lists, she drew charts, she compared bank statements to property deeds. The architect in her was in her element, carefully building a case, laying the foundation not for a building, but for a teardown. She found more than she'd even hoped for. David, in his arrogance, had gotten sloppy. There were side deals, fake companies set up to skim money off their own projects. Money moved to personal accounts she knew nothing about. He was stealing from their company. From her company. He'd been doing it for over a year. Every new discovery was another nail in the coffin she was building for him. The grief for Ilara was still there, a constant ache. But now it had a purpose. It was the fuel for her revenge. Every fake transaction she found was a strike for her daughter. Every lie she found in the paperwork was a counter-lie she'd used to take him down. He called every day. He sent texts, long rambling messages full of apologies and love. She read every one of them, her face blank. She was studying him, learning the rhythm of his desperation. It was all just information now. She wasn't his wife, his partner, or his lover anymore. She was a scientist, and he was her experiment, squirming under a microscope. She needed a weapon, a human weapon, someone who knew the law inside and out, not as a set of rules, but as a set of tools to be used. Someone quiet, ruthless, and completely loyal to what their client wanted. She remembered a name, a woman she'd met once at a fundraiser. A lawyer people in Ikoyi whispered about, calling her a fixer. A woman who didn't just win cases, she buried the other side. Her name was Yewande, and it was time to make a call. Yewande's office wasn't what Amara expected. It wasn't in one of those shiny new towers in Victoria Island. It was in a quiet, old colonial building in Ikoyi, hidden behind a wall of overgrown bougainvillea. Inside it was cool and dark and smelled like old books and lemon polish. There were no fancy degrees on the wall, just a few pieces of amazing, abstract Nigerian art. Yewande herself was a small, elegant woman in her late 50s. She wore a simple silk blouse and wrapper, and her greying hair was styled in a sharp but chic afro. She had eyes that saw everything and gave away nothing. She listened without saying a word, as Amara told her the whole story. She didn't offer any sympathy or empty words. She just listened, her fingers steepled under her chin. When Amara was done, she slid the black portfolio across the polished desk. "This is the proof," Amara said, her voice steady. "His financial crimes. And the documents that prove I'm the majority stakeholder and legal owner of the most important assets." Yewande opened the portfolio. She spent a long time looking through the papers, her sharp eyes not missing a thing. The silence in the room was only broken by the distant hum of a generator and the rustling of paper. Finally, she looked up. "He is a fool," she said. It was just a simple fact. Arrogance is always the thing that costs you the most. She closed the portfolio. "What is it that you want, Mrs. Adeoye?" "My name is Okoro," Amara corrected her. "Amarachi Okoro." Yewande gave a small approving nod. "Miss Okoro, what's your goal here? A divorce? A settlement? Do you want to press charges for assault?" Amara took a deep breath. "I want to press charges for the assault, yes. But that's not the main thing. A divorce is just a legal process. A settlement is just a money transaction. I don't want a transaction. I want annihilation." The word just hung there in the quiet room. Yewande's expression didn't change, but Amara saw a new spark of interest in her eyes. "I don't want his money," Amara went on, leaning forward. "I want to take it, but only so he can't have it. I want to take the company, the penthouse, the cars, the reputation. I want to strip him of every single thing he cares about. I want to leave him with nothing but the knowledge of what he did. I want him to live the rest of his life in a prison he built for himself. I want him to be haunted." She laid out her plan, the blueprint she'd been designing in her head. It wasn't just about lawyers and money, it was about psychology. It was about using David's own biggest flaw, his possessive, jealous paranoia, as the main weapon against him. "He accused me of cheating," Amara said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I want to make that accusation real. I want to create a world where he's surrounded by the ghosts of affairs I never had. I want his business partners, his friends, the whole world he fought so hard to conquer, to see him the way he sees me, as a liar, a cheat, and a fraud." Yewande listened, her eyes fixed on Amara's face. She wasn't just a client anymore. She was a kindred spirit. "Yewande, had built her whole career on the ruins of men just like David Adeoye. "This isn't a legal strategy," Yuanda said softly when Amara was finished. "This is a war. It'll be expensive, and it'll get ugly." "I have the money," Amara said, "and I have nothing left to lose. My ability to handle ugly is pretty much endless now." Yuanda smiled, a rare thin smile that was more like a predator's than a warm one. "All right then, Miss Okoro, I like a client with a clear plan." She stood up and held out her hand. "Shall we get to work? It's time for the architect to draw up the demolition plans." Amara shook her hand. Her grip was firm, cool and strong. For the first time since she'd woken up in the hospital, she didn't feel alone. She had found her weapon. The first seed was planted on a Friday night, 2 weeks after she'd met with Yuanda. David had been calling non-stop, his messages getting more and more frantic. He was starting to feel the cold shoulder, the first sign that this wasn't just a temporary fight. Amara, following Yuanda's advice, bought a burner phone with an untraceable number. From that phone she sent the first text. It was simple and cruel in its own elegant way. It